Okay, with like guitar. We're gonna just go out to the rap guy and friends. Y'all speak. I was just feeling with that, like that, because they're a cartoon series. I messed up. I messed up. I forgot what I had been doing before. I set up the YouTube video. Little Rap Guy and Friends began as an anti-archetypal criminal enterprise in the cartoon value nature system that can help humanities. Because just like every modern country's founders, per what was entrenched before them and above them, greater than, per, per method, what everyone missed too, and blamed on other things other than themselves. Where, right, where, and how. There are means to discern because nature shows this. So we could use the cartoon value system. So then they became Romulus, as we have to become, as part of the science of pantheism, which can be used to instantly bring artistic reliefs, injunctive reliefs, for example, relevant and relative to where and to how suburbs, let alone cities across the globe, everywhere the land is, even the most beautiful locations are tactically denatured. Since semi-ancient times simultaneously employed were needs forced than the system that was positive or negative for its guidance. The sciences became criminally foreign influence. Everyone became forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded, taken as all shock and awe, and worse, defending words, even believing them, and with tactical delusions in place of that which would have been preserved, not just for Native Americans, not just Native American history before they were united with our help. We still all lost. We're still, since before cars were invented, before cranes, trucks, before our founders were born, before our founding parents were even born, the suburbs had been designed. Slavery was involved with that system where colonies north and south already had it entrenched. That's why it was left entrenched. I'm not just saying these words. There was a breaching method left entrenched. No one had free speech. Everyone was a factory miniature slave. So syntactically, the laws were also forcing people to pretend others simultaneously. And that was sustained. So not only is everybody child abused as modern country, everywhere the species body of bodies is, that body was child abused by what came from some ancient times. It's still the hypernative system. That's why there's the phenomenon of how anyone could get away with not arguing or debating with a Native American who would, you know, all the evidence are there. All identity ground locations are criminally foreign influence, regardless of who it has to be blamed on. Admitting that brings immediate release. Call them artists, call them whatever. The whole species body longs to be that native course, the hyper native course, that is native to the extent we are. Though there is one way we could access that system that reveals evolution's fruits and gifts and means out of nowhere. As an invention, machine already invented, better than a machine already invented, as the identities of the hyper simultaneous identity relationship to itself, and the only increasing value of that. There are distinct identities of simultaneous nature / sequence nature, and simultaneously they can be examined as sequence / simultaneous nature. Same thing in a different sequence, but examined relative to where and to how we are syntactically manifest. Again, so functionally. And because a breaching method not used that, it used all roles, not just for the observable, the known and unknowns relative to the known bad things that it caused and kept and keeps now. The only reason they're still there is because the cause of part of it, the cause of it blamed on things other than themselves, and that was self-defended. As styles too, forced by nature. See, wrestling, martial arts, and boxing are more probably having been revealed by the ancients before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced. Uses of themselves for a whole bunch of different motivations that nobody wanted. Everyone was forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded. The people that wanted it were associated with per more than theory, per observation, means to discern it. What we need to counter syntactically, verbally, as a hyper-archetypal criminal enterprise. So we must make ourselves as the species body syntactically capable of, as fast as possible, admitting and countering that how our systems, plural and individual, and grouped, and all exceptions, how examine really how really and what is with even the real motivations and narratives associated with the motivations for the causes of everyone blaming other things, others themselves, or denying, or having it acceptable how people are people stacked upon in New York City, but you don't leave out any location because to discern the breaching method, we have to discern how it used all locations, how it used everyone sickly distinctly to keep out sickly non-distinctly from being discerned. We have to discern criminal insidiousness. I am not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal. We have to discern what is actually recorded from since before founding and since after founding, and still is active. Lawyers have roles planting evidences, including in the form of saying things at locations to bring things before courts. Originally and still, worse than witch trials. Certain type of victim that every single person is. That employed reactions, non-reactions. And though they attach that person to sequence shifts. And worse, fake words, fake ties to other people, fake natures of ties to other people from the youngest ages. From the youngest ages, we have the means presented by nature that communicate to us that a breaching method sickly distinctly was against Native Americans and sickly distinctly against everybody else. And sickly distinctly against our natural course by black peoples in the whites of eyes. With that being and having been assigned tactically ulterior from their natural function that's positive unto itself or capable of being positive unto itself. That is increasingly as language and as treatments of the nature with language, as we are doing when we make treatments of criminal insidiousness. Now, the first rule of the ancient gaming system is that anything invisible but still discernible, such as a predicate, such as a subject, it comes with the invisible, but the hyper invisible, but still discernible. But that together comes what takes contemplation, and it comes with what takes allowing use by syntactically people. For example, the value of sequence true was true to sequence and to the relativity of everything. Integrity wise, factory nature, measurements wise, and everything like this comes before this or that, as part of how we can see the complete identity that is more finite than the order of the finite. How there is an order of the smallest finite details about ourselves in the bodies around us that is perpetually beyond our means to grapple with but one way. How it guides us to, and how it is conjunction to what is also simultaneously bigger than our bodies and beyond our capacity to grapple with but one way. See, but that is a hyper way. That has all exceptions in exception nature and simultaneously in demonstration with how it uses exception and exception nature distinctly from how anyone else could. No one could invent it. How it uses it functionally. How the hyper invisible could, but still discernible, distinct from the invisible but still discernible, is functional. How we could discern the conjunction between slash hyperconjunction between five distinct identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature, where we have possession over this extent of existence slash space that we are boxings. But so, in other words, when each speak, they speak for law. They speak for the sciences, where each subject is made, the identity of the sciences is shared. It is right there, surging through all things, well not. One identity demonstrates of forever nature as the value, for example, of discerning distinct identities of simultaneous nature. How they are, that's one of the ways they are nature that is demonstrating us. It wants us to perceive and communicate about and as how we are individual, grouped and together, grouped areas, ages, sexes, how we're supposed to perceive this. And this is about the invisible but still discernible, slash hyper invisible but still discernible. This is about the electrical engineering, not just of everything, but of everything distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, for how we could discern it. And then furthers how hyper simultaneously, being relative to where and to how Earth has a special difference with relative with consciousness, no. And where measurement is involved, for example, with regards to how there are 1,095 days in 3 years. And so this is a theory that, but also science, like observationally, is relatively more probable and practical than the syntactical takes and the natures and uses of the natures of, theories on the genesis of things and or the generation of things and or the hyper generation of things, rather. Everything has and is a hyper identity, distinct from how it is identity, relative to Earth's a special difference. And again, where consciousness can be demonstrated to, where how we are value here by where more and more forever nature that can, by its system, that is also positive unto itself per its system, and where it has ties to ourselves syntactically. And this is also relevant for where and how each age affects human nature, where it employed us to be aware about things. It took away that conversation. The same things are going on now that have gone on so long that Native Americans, they can't even believe they're still happening. Like, for example, are their dreams, because Native Americans say that we should read Native Americans say that we should read each other's dreams, which is Native American wisdom. And if anyone could find the name of a chief who says that on YouTube, or said that in one video on YouTube, I would appreciate it. So because that there are not American history books that made treatments of criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatment simultaneously. Wherever there is a positive treatment or a negative treatment, there's an identity treatment being made. And from the youngest age, we know that these are not our means. And this is not the system of our nature that spoke for Native American rights and everyone else's rights strictly distinctly as our own. In other words, and even with that, where they employed those differences, where they employed black and white to mean what it wasn't, where that is discernible. Oh yeah, we know that. Yeah, but they assigned that not just to mean other things, and just to do other things, but to have manifest at other locations. Phenomena that effectively wasn't as employed as is employed. Everyone blaming other things, others themselves, with the breaching method causes. Even blaming on our founding parents. It's because this is relative to where to and how North and South colonies became North and South America, with slavery still sickly entrenched North and South, not just through other colonies, not just through the breaching method they share roles with. Their educations were also already in search of what they were, taking away and replacing further as the Native Americans. This made the phenomenon of every modern country individually grouped in together as sense and sensibility that cannot afford to stand. The revelations from simple things, like the guidance by where and how we have black pupils and whites of eyes can know that abridged, and we're really and how really it's important to speak about that. It's not relative to the things it caused, too, or not without not leaving out that method, because that method used all those other methods, all those pluralities of things that it caused and keeps to screen its method, where it knew that everyone would want that told on. So it employed the ulterior. So it employed the simultaneous as a means, what is actually knowing what is actually simultaneously recorded and the extent of it, and or not, and or the relevance of it. In other words, we could use these revelations. We could discern because how the worms no longer walk in the puddles because they're no longer in the soil. Because the soil no longer has things going into it. The grass gets cut and taken away. That's painted over by chemical, going into the, but there's no life. It's what's positive. Its system isn't there. There are criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatment. All forms of sustenance, income, and security are being and having been employed. Where they are being employed effectively, increasingly effectively, unchallenged since before founding. They still have right through our schools in our faces because they was against them too. Telling other than our founders left to be told for themselves. And motivations that can't pretend honestly other. So they self-value roles with juxtaposed natures and methods of predicate acts, delivery, and of criminal insidiousness natures of positive and negative treatments delivery, as identity theft, fraud, slander, delivery, non-distinctly, not just against every single American, but against every single person everywhere the species body is. And it knew that the phenomenon of modern countries would have to counter things like criminal insidiousness nature, syntactically incapable of doing it through the quote experts on everything. The sciences were abridged. Those locations were used after they had already been used for other, already having been taken to collusion /S. With that, where and how we are actually syntactically manifest and conjunctive to that relative where Earth's a special difference is gained here, or where and how the identity of the hypersimultaneous will only stay positive unto itself and only increasingly the value of that which is consciousness now as identity that we long to be. That's it. Just like that system, the way it is, perfect if it led its own way. See, we hear many grown-ups now never saw the worms. Because it's been for over a decade now. There's been a problem with the worms. And now it's like almost desert, but it's covered over because no one realizes. Green grass. But the worms walk into water and feed fish. So the ecosystem works. We don't have freshwater fish. We know this. The ocean already had dumped for decades plastic into it. That is slowly breaks down and becomes more dangerous when it's small. Goes into the fish and things like that. But we don't have fresh water. Everything that was made economic, because there's millions of people for now in this system that was never liberated to be able to speak for capitalism. It was never liberated to be able to speak for communism, communal, or what's communal. It was never liberated to be able to speak for socialism or what's sociology. But as criminal, but reliant upon logic, simultaneously reliant upon criminally foreign influence, positive and negative treatments, time treatments, increasingly identity treatments that can't defend themselves, names treatments, for example, they can't defend themselves and afford discern. That course about slavery that was sickly distinctly the slavery of our founders and of everyone else. And it was a syntactical. It was against what, if you heard people trying to speak against crazy laws that were maintenance to that conjunctive, where we are syntactically manifest, where we are quality as fact, human nature, where that criminal insidiousness, those criminal insidious natures of positive and negative and identity treatment simultaneous, those are demonstrated to us when we hear takes that left out the importance of where and how we have black pupils and white survives. That is hyper evidential. You see, but we have time treatments that were used simultaneously, too fast, too slow at all locations, then further private, but further differentially, private or not. And the interbranch of the time, which trials made up or not, because to an extent we know they were made up. So in other words, real short and sweet is American history. Told in other words, the Native Americans had something sustained against them that took them from the sciences as they were wanted to be spoke by nature, and are still by nature wanted spoke. All exceptions in exception nature, appearing to demonstrate the other thing, the other are really in demonstration of the same thing. But the relativity of this is denied. Per this method, how sickly distinctly the short words of everybody, or anybody who tries to use the revelations that come surging from that, how the course of black pupils and white survivors is abridged. It has been abridged, and simultaneously knowing that our founders left us to get the Constitution unabridged, and not to screen how it was left abridged, to have that understood, and revealed. The species body longs to train. So in other words, boxing, martial arts, and wrestling are relative to where there are needs to counter violence, so we have police. But syntactically, where they are manifest with their worst patients and criminals, forced. They're the worst people, private, tied to them, like the people who run the prisons and the campuses where everyone went to and trained to do this stuff, and on and off them. Apparently, they train on and off the campuses together, our countries, with subjects, with sciences like sociology, like history. They left out criminal foreign influence. They left out the phrase criminally foreign influence, and or they made uses of it exactly the way the breaching method wanted and needs. So where it has employed other things, others, ourselves, blamed for what it caused, people are also simultaneously valuing that having been blamed on other things, others, ourselves. So we have to use what is true always, not denying any exceptions, not valuing exceptions, denying not the slightest ones. Because then we can't use the revelations of the order of the finite. Then we can't monetize pantheism, which will be for all ground locations everywhere, but especially where it is most needed. We could the presidents are in their dreams, so we have to read each other's dreams. President Biden, president/chief. No, and no, are there incompatible volumes? They're only increasing, but they're bound anyway. Identity by nature, by that force. Also incompatible, because it wasn't forced by our founders. All exceptions, exception nature, but exception nature are a demonstration of the same thing. Appearing to be a demonstration of other, or a demonstration of the same thing, they had to contradict each other. It wasn't just, so we know the extent of of the fact treatment nature, lack of integrity while it was pretended simultaneous was great. We know sustained were a whole bunch of motivations, nature's needs, roles as a certain type of victim / hyper victim who had with it, just like the Native Americans, all identity ground locations already tactically denatured. Already with nature demonstrating not just negative value nature progression acts in nature's needs and means simultaneously to understand that everyone needs to cause positive value nature progressions. And the breaching method knew that how that would unfold then and how it would unfold now. And so it employed only allowed fathomed uses of criminal and ceaseless natures of positive and negative treatments of identity, the ground voicings through not just as ourselves. Because those are increasingly relevant, especially where it has and how we have the means of this science, pantheism, that is led by that identity of simultaneous nature that has manifest not just our species, individual, grouped, and species body, but has the other species this way. For example, so many pray, what is greater than and more finite than our control but one way is in demonstration to us. So this they long ago tactically denatured the entire landscape of the globe, and they painted it over with landscape theater that was and is theater as criminal insidiousness. I'm not a lawyer. There were roles with this with all the sciences, all locations, and then the sciences further differentially with the overt criminal enterprises and everyone per uses of even investigators. All needs to counter things in collusion with them per this method that Captain keeps quality of fact treatment nature forced at each age. That is criminal insidiousness, natures of positive and negative treatments, and of identity reliances as styles. It's relying upon styles of logic that can't defend themselves in a floor. The short words of any individual using the revelations and the means we have from the youngest ages to delineate the delusions from the criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, qualities, aspects, and uses of them, plural, of men and women, since we are little kids. And so this knew that our own here and their own there would need to sense people coming to uses of words properly before they can do it properly sustained. Uses of words like reality. In other words, you guys are worse than hypnotized since semi-ancient times. Control your minds. Respond. In other words, the time treatments at all locations are relative to this. Employments like hyper-employments and employments with the plural part in control by the breaching method, singular, that is recorded, our obligation to discern syntactically too, because of, you know, that's what one of the things witch trials was, even if it was made up. It was rules with those laws that were against everything everybody, what they and everyone around was allowed to say. Otherwise, they would get hurt by the system that all the criminally foreign influenced bodies and the ones using them were forcing all kind of ways, even though all that was being used remotely. It's not who was right or wrong. And it's about getting through everyone trying to blame people like that. People use the name of a leader. You know, they leave out, before and afterwards, they leave out kind of things like how the databases were still criminally foreign influence. Still, they had roles with nutbags, delusions wrought, with badges, as doctors pretending they could speak for mental health. Their roles with slavery. Their roles with courts, cases, worse than witch trials. Yeah. Differentially. See, this is differentially criminally foreign influence. They have people A through Z of the species body. And no one wants to be this. No one fathomed how they were used remotely from the youngest ages. Everyone attached to fake words, fake ties to other, fake natures, ties to, and all except nature and demonstration, same thing. Two produces of corners. This has had effectively, and it has effectively people shown preemptively, actively, and increasingly where and how they have to hide roles with predicate acts in databases already. Those are illusions that are very bad because they had been employed. This is also relevant where and how they have economic employments. With physics, they have identity employments. They have syntactical employments relevant to that which has, stayed identity theft, fraud, methods, styles, roles, natures, needs. You against yourselves, per where we communicate with each other, how we communicate with each other. Oh, that's crazy. And then people never, what are people arguing about? Then they change what the people were arguing. They leave out what's actually, in other words, now people aren't even arguing. They're starting arguments to offensively prevent a quality of fact-keeping nature where a whole bunch of natures of criminal insidious natures like wrongdoers and wrongdoing and predicate acts, past and present, and whole methods of predicate acts are involved, and roles with that. And we have roles with that. You have the family members. You have the sense and sensibilities of everyone like that. You have the people next to everyone. This is that rat trap game that was colonies north and south, with slavery entrenched north and south. The identities of the law wanted to be called rat trap, so they could call the person. So that means you don't want to be told something. They're kind of stupid, and they're pretending they're adults. That's stupid logic. Lying to you since your youngest age. And so as you guys can think of the name for the woman, part of the pantheism. But we need Romulus. We need to get Romulus going as the name of the gaming system, which we all take part as an anti-hyper archetypal criminal enterprise that began as an anti-archetypal criminal enterprise that was made by Romulus and Remus as Little Rap Guy and his brother Remus, who made the black pupils as an anti-archetypal criminal enterprise, as that which seems to be or is valued by art, with rap, for example, as that only allowed to voice or to make voicings for New York City, where and how, for example, it is most overt and simultaneously and insidiously manifest and scientifically capable of being discerned, where and how predicate acts delivery system method, a criminal insidiousness delivery system method, is upon each American sickly distinctly. It is upon each body of the human species, everywhere it is, and grouped and together. This method knew and exploits where and how actually we are manifest individuals of the species body of individuals, individual body of individuals, as the body of life too, distinctly and non-distinctly and simultaneously. So too we could discern how hyper simultaneous. So to display is explain this, we are life. As an individual, we are a sequence nature, and we are a simultaneous nature relative to the species being a body, invisible but still discernible too, as groups are. See, but groups cannot deal with the finite. Then you have one person speak for a group. But Jessica, she's going to speak for all the women. So we're not dealing with real premises treatments, or ones that aren't affected by criminally foreign influence, fact, human nature, quality aspects in nature, because we have not had this heard. Someone tries to say it, it is sensed by a whole bunch of plural identities of industries and of natures of interest and of natures of relativity to illusions from the past associated with that, and with the life progressions where and how they are being and having been employed, uses of them employed at other locations, and where and how the relativity of this, for example, is as part of the answers to where and to how they left the suburbs tactically denatured and dependent upon mass farming, for example. Thanks, mass farming. I'm not against you guys. We're in this trap sickly distinctly. And, sickly distinctly from the people of New York City, of people across the globe, in this little trap since before our founders' parents were even born, the suburbs design. The Native Americans and the relativity, the increasing value of understanding how there's how they're all the demonstrations of it being more probable and practical, and what the soul once said as American history needed to understand first is a predicate acts delivery system method, a criminal insidiousness delivery system method, criminal insidiousness nature, positive negative treatments of uses of the identity the sciences share. Forced, tricked, hurt, persuaded. Everyone, anyone, if you're a Native American against a Native American, to use words other and to remember words only other. Tactically, from what they want and need. And you as each. In other words, we don't want species to go extinct. Who says they want species to go extinct is lying to themselves or to others, and or they have delusions. And in other words, and or it's more importantly though, it's relative to the breaching method, which is relative to a whole bunch of excuses people have at all locations, which is relative to uses of all words, but words like excuses, for example, where how nature wants it that way. So we could explain this honestly. This rat trap method knew that it employed and sustained, perfected before there was any kind of order. What they call order is tactical ulterior from the 5 identities of order. The 5 distinct identities of sequence / simultaneous nature are as the order of the finite. They came before the value of sequence of the finite now, the smallest detail generated. There's the order of the finite now. That those aspects and things so small and altogether that we cannot be its order. We can only mess it up for a reason. This is part of what communicates with us. What's really going to cause positive value nature progressions, acts, natures, and everywhere at once. Otherwise, it's a criminal insidiousness. Or is it a criminal insidiousness nature of positive? And see, that's all that has been known. So people prejudice, this employed syntactically things to be blamed, other things, others themselves to be blamed, where and how we also knew that we would have to tell on this, where and how we could discern it worst relevant, and where and how it's so it being relevant, where and how the employments of things like black and white, which there are all kinds of countries with black and with what they call white, and they fight with each other because we're in a semi-ancient tribe, individually grouped and together. It employed and in self-defended and made self-value counters to the real causes of criminal insidiousness at locations, areas, and states. Things like predicate acts methods, wrongdoers, timed uses of that, and timed use of it simultaneously that most people are missing and that we'll all understand. But we have to deal with what is true always, not leaving out the smallest finite detail. So this requires a quality of fact-keeping nature and freedom that is outside of interbranch locations and of the private ones tied to them. But they were employed too, just like people A through Z, just like the overt criminal enterprises, just like the private ones, as styles, as logic, as identities, as nature. Tactical ulterior from nature that is also positive unto itself, where we are simultaneously hyper nature, where we're the hyper simultaneous nature, rather. Also, demonstration of this being increasing in value, and people that is that inherent to and as the value of logic of those who would deny it. And the relevance of all that left out by the subject treatments relative to the things associated with slavery, let alone with slavery. And then again itself. So they leave that out because even greater than that and worse than that were the assignments that had nothing to do with that. Just how when you make a temporary positive or negative location, assigned a letter on the keyboard. And then by the different computer languages. Doing the things together or mimicking that by exploiting, doing the things first in microseconds and then having it appear as if it's taking place simultaneously. But all that, even the pictures of ourselves, have to be broken into the digital pixels and then arranged for the various sizes of screens and things like that. And so left out were the databases involvement since before computers, since before our founders were born. And roles with that behavior racketeering method. Again, with positive and negative treatment simultaneously being and having been employed and hyper-employed. Multi-front, off the records, even without anyone discerning, because it was using everyone as marionettes. It was using everyone as cartoon characters, entertaining what it knew nature was going to demonstrate as the cause of negative value, as part of the cause of negative value nature progressions, acts of natures. But as one's increasingly incapable of being a nature, capable of defending themselves and affording anyone else or themselves the ability to use short words or long words properly, which requires discernment of how everyone is differentially criminally foreign influenced. When you make fact treatments, opinions, and convictions, and with delusions simultaneously regarding the value of means to discern how sciences are, how we have black peoples and white survivors, and how that was left out of subject treatments and of racial treatments, where race is being and had been employed by the breaching method that employed slavery, is self-valued through motivations of people that are self-valuing, having been trained to be a group measured, a group. Oh, this is the Latino voters. Well, these are these are the Italian American voters. These are the black voters. Black, and we still haven't had this conversation. That's proof for better than reparations. That's proof for injunctive reliefs. That solves and keeps not even the need for all kinds of arguments that were employed. You're entertaining walking into schools in locations that are overtly / insidiously simultaneously having been as actually recorded, how actually used and having been used remotely, criminally foreign influence. Victims and victim predators where everyone's having blamed other and pretending not to realize, oh, we're tough. All right, but don't be so tough. You know. So, people, what we want is to have this admitted, to have our means admitted, human means, not some crackpot game from since before our founding parents were even born, with the suburbs designed and everything to cause negative value nature progressions, and the only positive value nature progressions, fake sides. Arrays overtly criminal enterprises, private ones, all exceptions tied to the interbranch, and people A through Z with uses of words like republic and or like democracy, or like republic, and or like legion, and or like tribe. and or like yin yang, and or like alpha and omega, alphabet. So the vaccines tells us things. It things like this, something like this. Good night, people. There's nobody on here, but for the people who might watch this someday, take the time to watch this man, this wisdom. This will lead. And I even throw in additional with the pantheism will come the Burroughs book. And so we know positively, even though we're going to have to give the whole possession of it to people who don't know anything about fun, the people who don't know anything about how to speak for evil or how to speak for good, relative to the meanings, where and how we had answers that never were spoken, even though we had them, because no one fathomed really what was behind the motivations of others, because this employed motivations. This employed logic blaming other things, others ourselves, where and how our means are real short, and where they are long, that is increasingly prevented. The nature of the uses of short words with revelations and their protraction until the course of things, vaccines itself has circles too. So, in other words, alpha and omega are differentially positive or negative to itself, which is hyper invisible. This is not something that is discernible by ourselves. But one way, in other words, everyone has excuses. You want to stop the bad things, you have to take away those excuses, because those excuses are also tied to way worse that everyone denies and gets away with denying, because all of that is used remotely too. And how they have all these other motivations, nature's needs, interests, and differences They have complete strangers kept needing to hide the same sequence yet find active progressive lives. As styles rely upon uses of positive treatments like the name of science, like words like as scientific values, as identities of volume, like every word and phrases that's used. So sentence, so abused. Don't lose. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.